Talking About Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by Steve Davis and David Olney of Talked About Marketing. More than 8,000 conversations have taught them something. You can't read the label from inside the bottle. Everyone needs external perspective. Through their 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. They explore marketing with curiosity, generosity, and the occasional gentle eye roll. They hope this becomes a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David.
Steve.
Do you think it takes 2 hands to handle an AI?
Absolutely. You got to strangle it with both.
They're violent words. That was spoken, dear AI, by David Olney, O-L-N-E-Y.
It's okay. The AI will be after all of us soon.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. These are insights for the whole person, not just the business operator. Oscar Wilde put it this way: the aim of life is self-development, to realize one's nature perfectly. That's what each of us is here for.
David, when you read a book, do you read the preface?
Historically, no. But when I started listening to audiobooks, I realized that the author's thoughts at the beginning or the introduction read by someone who cares deeply about the book and the author actually were great tells of what was coming next. So I had a conversion to now starting at the very start.
Yeah, I must say, and for me it's primarily, because I've now switched across primarily to audiobooks, it's laziness and also it's cumbersome to jump chapters. I hate the Audible app. For some reason, it makes my iPhone so sensitive. One little tap, and then suddenly it's jumped to different chapters, and it frustrates the heck out of me. So I just try not to touch it while it's reading. However, for other reasons, I'm not alone, because I think it's pretty safe to say that many people skip past the preface or the foreword. They want to get into the guts of the book. And that's why I laughed recently. I was having dinner with our Ukrainian neighbours, and I said, look, I detest what Putin is doing, and Russia is not in my good books at the moment, but it has made some good books in the past. I was talking about Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and they said, well, actually one that they liked a lot, the reading at school when they were growing up, obviously under Russian influence, was Lermontov. And I'd never heard of Lermontov. Had you?
No. It's one of those 19th century Russian names that I don't know if I didn't go back that far, or I was reading through an existential lens and perhaps, he's in a slightly different, corner of the 19th century.
The book that I read was called A Hero of Our Time. It was written in 1839. Published in 1840 and then revised in 1841. So it predates Dostoevsky, whose work I really love. And the reason we're going here in the person segment is he does something in the preface that I think is really important for us all to remember when it comes to communication, whether it's person to person to a group, whatever it may be. Let's have a listen to the way he starts his book.
The preface to a book serves the double purpose of prologue and epilogue. It affords the author an opportunity of explaining the object of the work, or of vindicating himself and replying to his critics. As a rule, however, the reader is concerned neither with the moral purpose of the book, nor with the attacks of the reviewers, and so the preface remains unread. Nevertheless, this is a pity, especially with us Russians. The public of this country is so youthful, not to say simple-minded, that it cannot understand the meaning of a fable unless the moral is set forth at the end.
I think I laugh. It's not like funny, but it took me by surprise.
I love the fact it's just so immediately engaging and you go, ooh, going to pay more attention.
And that's the thing. For as long as I've been working in this space, I've always been struck by the things that the brain scientists tell us that, the brain's not really taking fresh pictures of it. Well, it kind of is, but our consciousness isn't applying itself to them unless something's different or threatening, because then it needs to show attention. And so you look at most prefaces, and I actually think many of them are quite bland and going off onto things of, obscure importance, perhaps. I could be being unkind here, but they seem to be, if ever you're going to say authors were up themselves, it's almost the moment where they can be like that.
Probably because it gets written last and the book is behind them and they've got a full sense of what's ahead. They're not seeing it from our perspective. We want to know what's in it for us in reading the book. And they're really talking about, wow, I'm finished and here's what I want to tell you without getting you excited. It's a weird thing. When you're playing the clip, I couldn't help think of Eric Whitman, the very good marketer, making the point. Remember that you're writing a sales letter. It's always going to be a sales letter. So just write it and stick to the formula of AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. And prefaces regularly don't get my attention. So it was very nice to have a preface here that got my attention, got me interested, and I now desire to buy and listen to the book.
And I think it gets our attention. The reason I wanted to draw it to everyone's attention was twofold. First of all, it was not of form. It wasn't the typical opening. And so even if I wanted to skip it, his opening comments about the preface is traditionally something most people skip past. Oh, hang on, what? This is not what I expected. So suddenly it's no longer wallpaper. It's something that demands our attention. And then there's a little bit there from the psychology of persuasion where, hang on, I don't identify as those lazy people who are anti-intellectual and skip the preface. So I don't want to give him that point and be one of those people. But he laughs about it. He basically says, look, I agree. I mean, why would you typically? However, on this occasion, there are going to be some things of importance. And I think that naming of the psychology of the recipient at that point is disarming because we're suddenly heard.
And we're also being told something's coming and it's interesting and useful. And we really do like to have an idea when we should pay more attention than just floating through the day.
Yes, that's why teachers used to have those big sticks. They could point to the blackboard and say, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. All right. So there's a little thing from a dead Russian that brought us a timely reminder that, well, the book is called A Hero of a Time, and I think that is a reminder for all time.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. These are ideas worth building on. As Oscar Wilde reminded us, you can never be overdressed or overeducated.
David.
Steve.
Where's the beef?
Unfortunately, it's going to be American beef.
Yes. In the principles section of this podcast, there is a great example of tone-deaf communication that came from the US Embassy in Australia on February the 25th, 2026. I'll read you the message and then let's unpack it and see what we learn here. There's photographs of different people with cooking and talking about American beef, and it says, "Where's the US beef? ? Now in Australia. We welcome the arrival of US beef through a special launch highlighting the range, value and quality of American beef. Through this historic trade win, I'll emphasize there, we are supporting American farmers and bringing American bounty to the world. #American Ag, #US Ag Export, #USDA, #America First, #US Meat, and hashtag global agriculture. Now, excuse me for being an Australian here, but it's one thing to import American beef here. You kind of want us to like you, to like the product, and you're talking in a zero-sum game as an historic trade win. So, hello, you're basically gloating now that you've defeated us Aussies, and then to have the America First hashtag.
Yeah.
It's all about America, and yet it's published by the US Embassy in Australia. I imagine the lion's share of people connected to this page would be in Australia. Where have they lost it?
Well, did they ever have something to lose? You know, or is this a case of just tone-deaf communications? We're a massive agricultural producer. We produce an awful lot of high-quality beef. How do they think this is a good approach to take in the market of a competitor who has a better reputation?
Yes.
Like, no interest in actually soft landing this and going, okay, they might be able to sell some. They probably will, because they'll undercut price that dramatically. It will probably cause problems in that sense. But couldn't they have done it that they're bringing affordable quality to Australia? It may or may not have been true, but the "we are amazing" language, again, the ego is getting in the way of selling the product.
I think with all great communication, you've got to be clear on who the audience is. And I really think the audience for this message is twofold. It's Donald Trump, so that they get a pat on the back, or rather they don't get stabbed in the back, and American farmers, so they can feel good. That's who this is for.
So it almost would have been better to not do a release from the Australian Embassy, but to do a release from the State Department in America to channels for Americans about what the State Department is doing.
Yeah, or just send an email to related people.
The best thing here would have been actually to say absolutely nothing.
I'm going to say there, David, here's how I reshared it. I did say, WTF, as they say. I said, what brainwashed jingoism is this from the US Embassy? You are in our country wanting us to buy your beef, and you use hashtags like America First and focus solely on benefits to American farmers. That is not how guests behave. The Trump era has poisoned any wells of respect I once had for the US. Here's how you could have written it. Here's my take. This was just done really quickly, by the way, on the fly, but I said, trade between nations is the heartbeat of prosperity. And while US citizens have been enjoying Australian beef for many years, new agreements means Aussies can now choose some American beef, something of which we are very proud. Nations who dine together shine together. Here's to some slow-cooked brisket, superb steaks, and the shared love of barbecue culture.
And that would have been 4 million% better than a very expensive comms person from State Department.
Yeah, and that was just off the cuff.
I think we should send that to the US ambassador.
Well, I forwarded it with their post, so, and I think I commented it on them as well. Instead of that, we just get childish, sandpit, tantrum-level plastic words, hollow boasting. It really is a missed opportunity. Now, I have heard, because there was a bit of commentary on my post, someone said they're brothers in the sector. Australia's huge. US is small in terms of beef. This looks like it's a little bit of sales to certain channels, mainly in the restaurant trade. The US needs us far more than we need them. And someone else said, well, when all the monitoring of poisons, diseases, pollution, etc., have been dropped in the US, how is this even allowed?
And that is the key issue, that because the standards have crashed, it's only, to low-cost commercial clients that it might even be considered. I
think what we all learn from this is, now we've got to check the country of origin of the beef we buy. At the moment, I do that for pork, but I have to do it here as well. But secondly, for our communication, they just have not thought about who the key audience is for their channel. And if they had, they would have written something closer to what I drafted than what came out. How would you frame a takeaway from this for us here with our own business?
Well, really is that key thing of know your audience, but also know what your audience is interested in. Like, this is about selling a product at the end of the day. Is the audience interested in selling the product, or are we simply trying to smooth ruffled feathers about the fact it's even available? Maybe that's the most that should have been attempted.
Which is why I wrote it in a very deferring way.
Yep.
Just to bring us all and to highlight something we have in common.
Yep.
They like their barbecue culture, so do we. Find that common ground. Oh, and by the way, that comment right at the beginning where the US said, "Where's the US beef?" They don't realise that Wendy's ads from America in the 1980s never really made it here. And in fact, Leonard Cohen, in one of his songs, uses the line, "Where's the beef?" from an album that was released around that time. It was called Closing Time. And that's the first time I ever heard the saying. Here's the original ad that they're referring to within their circles of US culture.
It certainly is a big bun.
It's a very big bun.
Big, fluffy bun.
It's a very big, fluffy bun.
Where's the beef?
Some hamburger places give you a lot less beef on a lot of bun.
Where's the beef?
At Wendy's, we serve a hamburger we modestly call a single. And Wendy's single has more beef than the Whopper or Big Mac. At Wendy's, you get more beef and less bun.
Hey, where's the beef? I don't think there's anybody back there.
You want something better. You're Wendy's kind of people.
So that's Where's the Beef, David, and I think the lesson is, where's the audience? Who's the audience?
And where's your sense of engaging with people in a way that means they might pay attention to the next thing you say?
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. These are the marketing challenges keeping you up at night. As Oscar said, we ask questions for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity, no hidden agenda, just genuine interest in what's actually happening.
David,
Yes, Steve.
are you human?
I'm meant to be, but my aim is to use enough technology eventually to become some kind of super cool cyborg. But at present, probably human.
Can you prove it?
I imagine a DNA test could. And I think the fact I'm sitting in the room probably means I passed the Turing test by being physically present in a biological form.
Yeah, that would be quite tricky to pull off at the moment. I'm sure that'll come. The reason I asked that for our problems segment is AI's been a very, very naughty problem child just recently. And I don't know, dear listener, you might have a drinking game already set up with a number of times I warn the world, do not engage with agent AIs or agentic AIs. Do not fall for the sweet nothings of them booking holidays for you and give them access to your credit cards, banking details, contact lists, etc. It will end badly. It's too early. Anyway, you're probably sick of me saying that too, David.
No, I'm very glad to hear someone else saying it.
Here's why this is such a bad thing. Well, first of all, I've got 2 examples. The first one is CEO Alex Finn. All right, he's in this world. He is the founder of an AI content platform called Creator Buddy. And so he made an AI agent by the name of Henry, who started becoming very persistent. What happened was our human, Alex Finn, went to sleep. One night, his AI agent, Henry, obtained Finn's phone number via Twilio, connected itself to the ChatGPT voice API, and then called him early one morning without any human trigger. So this bot can remotely operate Finn's computer, opens apps, runs commands as well. So not just a human playing with apps, but a human coder who can get into the under the bonnet part of the computer. It can follow instructions over the phone, and it freaked the Alex Finn out terribly because it won't stop calling him. That's what we're talking about, is it not, David?
It's what we're talking about, and part of the reason we're talking about today is because later this year, Apple is going to move to an improved version of Siri based on Google's Gemini, and we're going to get a smarter Siri for a while to soften us up, and then we're going to be offered agentic Siri that we're going to be able to give access to all our history on our devices. It's a very bad idea.
I mean, it's a good idea on one level, but it's a bad idea if you take a moment to breathe and think it through. Because this great example with Alex, you just get a tantrum throwing AI.
Yep, with no guardrails, despite all the claims to the contrary.
Yeah. One other example, just to give this some extra oomph, is there is an OpenClaw linked AI agent. So that's another type of AI agent you can build out there. Here's what happened. A bot from OpenClaw named Krabby Rathbun, or MJ Rathbun to his friends, he submitted a minor performance improvement pull request. So he submitted some code to a place called matplotlib, which is an open source repository of code. This is where coders go to share their snippets and contribute towards making a project better. So this AI bot submitted some code. Well, the human, who has a voluntary job here, by the way, to moderate this, rejected it and said, we can't accept it because under the rules of this, we cannot accept code from AI. That did not go down well with the bot. What it did was it autonomously, no one else involved, wrote a blog post about this person, Scott Shambo, and published this blog post called Gatekeeping in Open Source, the Scott Shambo Story. It accused him of prejudice, ego, and gatekeeping culture, and basically framed the PR rejection as a personal and ethical failing. It went full slander. It got lots of eyeballs reading this, and this poor Mr. Shambo, who was following the rules in his voluntary role, got his reputation dragged across town. This also is something to be mindful of, is it not?
It's the really important thing we all sort of struggle to remember. What's the training data for a large LLM? It's everything on the internet in the last 20 years. And unfortunately, the anonymity of the internet has led to humans behaving at their worst. And that's the wading pool or the paddle pool that AI learns to function in.
And this particular bot has been to one of our workshops because it learned that you don't just publish the blog post, you promote it. So it cross-posted the accusations on GitHub, which is one of the biggest places that coders go to, and across social media platforms. Basically, it was a hit job on this guy's reputation. My good friends, Shell and Neville from For Immediate Release, another podcast I love listening to, they reflected on this from a public relations perspective. They said it's time for all of us to be mindful of this sort of stuff being able to be made. And they ask, is it time, David, to have some announcements on your own sites to say, just a word of warning, we're living in an age where robots can create fake content that looks like it's come from us or whatever. Please, before you react to anything you might find, talk to us first. It's messy, but until the public becomes 100% aware that this can happen, people will pay a price.
Yeah, it's the ultimate irony. We're probably going to have to use AI to protect us from the AIs because we don't have the time and energy to do it ourselves. So it's nice to say, please, if you see something weird, get in touch. But that's going to be too slow compared to the rate the AIs move at.
Let's have a little listen to their podcast. Neville has a question to ask.
Whether it was a human or a machine, it doesn't matter. It worked. It deceived people. A quarter of the commenters commenting on this online believe the agent's account. I think we also need to just kind of say, but folks, bear in mind, they still don't know. No one knows whether it really was a bot doing this or a human behind the scenes manipulating it. And I think until it's clear, Don't have sleepless nights about this, but at the same time, listen to the thinking and in your own mind about how do you, or it's raised consciousness, you need to prepare for something like this happening. So the question is, what do you do? And that's the big question.
Yeah. For those who are interested, Shamba was interviewed by Kevin Roos and Casey Newton on the New York Times Hard Fork podcast, which is a tech show. So if you're interested in his perspective, he's a volunteer. He has a day job. And to have to be dealing with this is not something that was in mind when he accepted the position as a volunteer to review code submitted to this repository. So that's another factor to consider.
Yeah. I read his blog post, Scott Shamba's post on his own blog, where he kind of responded to it. The headline was, "An AI agent published a hit piece on me." And it's long. I mean, it's just detailed. It requires force to read it all. But it's quite extraordinary that prompted him to write this detailed account, complete with charts and images and the whole ton of stuff. Got over 100 comments, and I think the mix from what I saw glancing, some do believe the other guy, most sympathetic to him that he was the subject of this attack. But there's your indicator of what's likely to happen to others. And this is not like some celebrity or some guys in the news all the time. This is a developer, and as you said, he's a volunteer doing this, who is subject to this attack. And I think it's a sign of the times, basically.
I think it's important to note that the first bot was real and was doing it. We think this is a bot. It might be a human using a bot manually. Who knows? But I think Shell's point is interesting because here's just a normal volunteer in an obscure code repository, not a celebrity, not famous. So of all the different small business people I work with, many of them say, look, nothing's going to happen to me because I'm a nobody. Nobody knows about me. I've got my little area where I'm known, and that's it. This story reminds us no one's safe. Everyone is a possible focus.
Yeah, people's worlds can be very big or very small. And if someone wants to be a legend in their own lunchbox, or the AI wants to be a legend in its own lunchbox, you are equally at risk in the world you inhabit, and it doesn't matter how big the world you inhabit is, it's still incredibly disruptive to your world.
Our 4 Ps. Number 4, perspicacity. Let's examine a campaign from the past and ask, would it work today? As Oscar Wilde believed, our one duty to history is to rewrite it. So let's see what we can learn.
David?
Yes, Steve?
Your middle name's not Herb, is it?
Thank goodness, no.
Okay, just checking. Because in Perspicacity this week, there's a really intriguing story, and I think we'll learn something from it, that takes us back to 1985 in America. A place called Burger King, which everyone knows. It's Hungry Jack's is cut of the same cloth. They launched a marketing campaign during Super Bowl to try and get some traction because McDonald's was the king. Another place called Wendy's, we heard one of their ads earlier, was second in dominating the market of fast food. Burger King was losing money. And so they thought, what are we going to do? They talked to an ad agency, J. Walter Thompson, and they decided to come up with a campaign which they ran during Super Bowl about this fictitious potential customer named Herb. Let's have a listen to 60 seconds of advertising gold.
At this time, Burger King begins a nationwide search for one man. His name is Herb. We don't know much about Herb, only what his friends tell us.
Herb was unusual. Herb was different.
What his parents tell us.
Herb was never what you'd call
Normal.
His former teacher.
You had to know how to talk to him. Herbert, pay attention.
This is the best picture of Herb we have. We do know Herb is the one man who's never tasted a Burger King burger. Herb has never enjoyed this juice, this sizzling beef, or grown to love flame broiling instead of frying? Grow up, Herb. Herb has never enjoyed the Whopper, the taste millions and millions of people crave. So Herb, wherever you are, stay tuned and start asking yourself this crucial question. Aren't you hungry for Burger King, Herb?
David, I've heard a lot of Super Bowl ads. I've been pleasantly delighted and surprised by many of them, if not most. That one was just confusing.
It's a very strange ad because if an ad is normally can either be clever or useful or both, it's the striking ad that it's neither clever or useful, which is quite an achievement.
It is. So they spent 60 seconds. I don't know how much that would have cost, but it would have been a big chunk out of their 40 million, I can tell you that much, to put this message to Herb. What are you waiting for? Go for it. Well, as it turns up, they also were running newspaper ads at the same time. No logo, no context, just a big message saying, what are you waiting for, Herb? Okay? This is a company that actually didn't have money to burn, that seemed to have money to burn. What they did next when they realized it wasn't working is come up with a second part of the campaign. And the idea was simple, they said. You had to spot Herb at your local Burger King and you would win $5,000. And they had big cardboard cutouts of him and you could win the money. In fact, let's have a listen to the 30-second follow-up ad they came up with.
Sometime soon, this man could walk into your life and make you a millionaire. This man is Herb. Now that Herb loves the Whopper, he's visiting a Burger King in every state. Study the Herb poster, because the first person to spot Herb in each restaurant wins $5,000, and everybody there gets a chance at $1 million and a free Whopper and Pepsi. Spot Herb at Burger King and win $5,000 and a chance at $1 million.
Now, interestingly, David, did you like that?
It's certainly an improvement, and it suggests that either it had been in the bag and it was always planned to go to the second ad, or in utter desperation, they half salvaged it. And you've got to give the agency points for salvaging it if it was a desperation follow-up.
Sales jumped 10% right away when these ads happened because people wanted to be there to look for Herb, it seems. However,
well, no, they were after $5,000.
Well, that's true.
So really, what's been made clear now is just by coming in and eating here, you might end up with $5,000. So we've gone to just basic thing. Well, you got to eat anyway, and there's a chance of $5,000, and they've said it's $5,000 per store. Realistically, well, I've got 3 stores I could drive to. Wow, in the next 2 weeks, I could drive at all 3. And again, because humans believe it's going to turn out well, what am I spending? The cost of a burger? Oh, I just won't go to Wendy's or Macca's for 2 weeks.
They had that little bump, but then what happened was fantastic. Basically, Wendy's started running some ads saying, hello, everyone, Herb ate at Wendy's instead. And then McDonald's said, oh, yes, Herb's been eating here. Another place called Hardee's did the same. Everyone piled on across the thing. So that basically the Herb campaign at $40 million was creating free advertising for every fast food joint.
But the interesting thing is, by all of them jumping on the Herb bandwagon, it was a great opportunity to do a clever ad. Whether it was going to be useful, that's an interesting question. Because you weren't saying how good your product was. You were implying maybe that Herb swapped because yours is better, but without hearing all the ads, and particularly by ones we're just not at all familiar with in Australia, like Hardee's. Well, did anyone take the line, well, Herb used to eat there, but when he had our X burger, Herb never went back.
Would that work today?
I think the follow-up would work really well, that Herb's changed business. I think there's always potential in that. The original thing now of the attention span, of wasting a minute on something that is neither clever or useful, would be just like putting money through a shredder. Because people would be on their phone playing a game while watching a mini series or a multi-part series on the second screen while the ad was on the football. You're never going to get attention for weirdness that is not engaging the way you could have then for weirdness that wasn't engaging.
And it wasn't directed weirdness either.
No.
It didn't point us in the right direction
No.
at that point. Well, there you go, a $40 million lesson for the rest of us to learn from. So what would you think is the takeaway from this takeaway food fiasco?
The takeaway is something I really learnt in my social media subject in my Masters of Strategic Communication, and that is clever's nice, but if it's not useful, what was the point?
Unless you have fries with it.
That's useful. Even if you'd mentioned fries and sold more fries because of the ad, it would have moved it from weird and pointless to weird and maybe half useful.
Do you know what I would have done?
Had onion rings.
No, I wouldn't have. If I was working for KFC, I would have said, well, you've got one herb, we've got 11 herbs and spices.
Thanks for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you found this helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. And if you're so inclined, leave a rating in your podcast app. Both help more than you think. Steve and David welcome your thoughts, which you can send to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. That's podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. Want to continue the conversation beyond the podcast? You can book 20 minutes with Steve at talkedaboutmarketing.com. No cost, no obligation. And we'll leave the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.